Hello. So today we're reading a poem by the Israeli poet David Avidan. It's called Yipui Koach. I'll read it first in Hebrew and then translate it. Or first I will translate it simultaneously and then I'll read it in Hebrew. Yipui Koach, which means power of returning. What justifies most of all the loneliness, the great despair, the strange carrying of the great loneliness and the great despair is the simple, indisputable fact that we don't really have anywhere to go. In the clear nights, the air is cold. Sometimes in the nights, also clouds. Rain falls and there are it's a special word for very warm days. And beautiful bodies and faces. 2 hours smiling, sometimes smiling, sometimes not. Sometimes because of her, sometimes because of him. The body is simple and lacking fog. Angels on a ladder don't go down, don't go up. Sometimes hate, sometimes love. There are few friends and mostly enemies, but there is a great desire to flow like a river alone in the light of day and to remain young always and to dream of the pace of a daring pace by day, like a river alone, to flow, only our body old from day only our body grows old from day to day. What justifies most of all the dream, the great despair, the knowledge that there is no justification is the astonishment and also the despair. What justifies most of all, what justifies the great despair is the simple, indisputable fact that we don't really have anywhere to go. Only our bodies grow older from day to day, and we are a river by day to flow alone, only alone to flow. What justifies the dream, what justifies the great despair, what justifies it above all. It says it's dedicated to whom it may concern, sort of to anyone. We'll analyze it. It says power of attorney to whom it may concern. It's sort of like it's like what do you leave after someone dies, you know? Power of attorney. It sounds like he was writing his will. ייפוי כוח. מה שמצדיק יותר מכל את הבדידות, את הייאוש הגדול, את הנסיעה המוזרה בעול, הבדידות הגדולה, הייאוש הגדול, היא העובדה הפשוטה והחותכת שאין לנו בעצם לאן ללכת. בלילות בהירים האוויר צונן, ולפעמים בלילה מואבים גם כן. יורד גשם ויש חמסינים וגופות יפים וגם פנים שאיתים מחייכים ואיתים לא. לפעמים בגללה, לפעמים בגללו. הנוף הוא פשוט חסר ערפלים. מלאכים בסולם לא יורדים לעולים. לפעמים שונאים, לפעמים אוהבים. יש מעט ידידים ובעיקר אויבים. אבל יש תשוקה חזקה לזרום כמו נהר יחידי לאור היום, להישאר צעיר תמיד ולחלום על קצב נועז לאור היום. כמו נהר יחידי, לזרום, רק גופנו זקן מיום ליום. מה שמצדיק יותר מכל את החלום, את הייאוש הגדול, את הידיעה שאין כל הצדקה, את ההתפעמות ואת המועקה. מה שמצדיק יותר מכל, מה שמצדיק את הייאוש הגדול, היא העובדה הפשוטה החותכת שאין לנו בעצם לאן ללכת. רק גופנו זקן מיום ליום, ואנחנו נהר לאור היום. לזרום יחידי לזרום. מה שמצדיק את החלום, מה שמצדיק את הייאוש הגדול, מה שמצדיק יותר מכל. I hope you could understand some of the poem. I feel like after I read it in Hebrew, I understand it better than when I try to translate. So again, he says, this is like a power of attorney. It's sort of like a will you leave after you die. It says, to whom it may concern. What justifies mostly the loneliness, the great despair, is the strange carrying of the heaviness of the great loneliness and the great despair is the simple fact that we don't really have anywhere to go. In the clear nights and the cold air, sometimes the nights are cloudy also. And it rains, and sometimes it's very warm. And there's beautiful bodies, beautiful faces. Sometimes they smile, sometimes not. Sometimes because of her, sometimes because of him. I'm reading it again in English to see if I could change my understanding. The view is simple, and it lacks fogginess. Angels and a ladder don't go down, don't go up. Sometimes we hate, sometimes we love, and there are few friends and mostly enemies. But there's a desire to flow, a strong desire to flow like a river alone towards the day, to remain young, always young, and to dream about it. Daring pace by day, like a river alone to flow. Only our body gets old from day to day. What justifies most of all that dream, the great despair, the knowledge that there is no justification, the astonishment, the burden? What justifies most of all, what justifies the great despair is the simple indisputable fact that we don't really have anywhere to go. Only our body gets older from day to day, and we are a river by day, to flow alone. What justifies the dream, what justifies the great despair, what justifies it above all. This poem, David Avidan, the Israeli poet, dedicated to whom it may concern, to everybody. He says that there is the only justification that we continue to carry the big burden of loneliness and despair is the fact that we don't really have any place to hide. We don't really have anywhere to go. And every time, every season, it's clear when it's raining, when there's summer and there's a great heat wave, cold in Khamsin in this area, after the strong desert wind, Khamsin, when there's really strong summer, very hot summer, when we love and when we hate. There's no salvation, because in the world there's no angels like those that are in Jacob's dream, that go up and down a ladder, struggling with him, and also defeated, and they promise promises. Not only angels, there's nothing in the world. There's also very few true friends and a lot of enemies. Only the desire to live, to remain young, continues in a great, powerful way, but there is no hope that can come true. The body gets older, and there's no real goal for the dreams about eternal life. And also astonishment, also despair is expected. There's only one end. And whatever man is expected to part from this world and to live in this inevitable, unavoidable loneliness of death. This is the fate of all human beings, not only poets that are sick and are poor. The last rhyming poem is משהו מצדיק את הייאוש הגדול היא העובדה הפשוטה החותכת שאין לנו בעצם לאן ללכת. It rhymes. What justifies the great despair is the indisputable simple fact that we don't really have anywhere to go. So it rhymes in Hebrew. Stays in our consciousness, and a lot of people quote him when we talk about Israel in difficult days of loss and fear. It's a simple fact, indisputable fact, that we don't have anywhere to go. And as a society, we don't really have anywhere to go. Are we going to have a good end? From that, the poet is able to, is it going to improve our life that the poet is able to express existential despair so well? That is the question. In his life, David Avidan, I'm going to talk about him a little bit, a very honest Israeli poet, modern Israeli poets, and it says the social worker went up the fourth floor of a building without an elevator in Tel Aviv. She came in, she called for an ambulance, but there was nothing. The doctor could only conclude his death. He was found in his bed, dead. And then everyone was astonished. There was great chaos. He was very lonely, but his despair was already known. He had very difficult life. His friend, Professor Gabriel Moked, came to him to interview him, but he couldn't get up to open the door. And he was lying on the floor, surrounded by tens of jars of different medicines everywhere. I wonder why the professor went to interview him and not to give him practical help. Everybody had very bad emotional, you can imagine. The professor opened the fridge to show that it's empty of food. That's very mean, cruel. And he was able to sit down and talk a little bit about his how he feels bad and that he has no financial help. Where are all the cultural institutions? Where is the municipality? Moked was angry. Why didn't he help him? I mean, he has an income. He's a professor at the university. It's so funny that people expect other people. Why didn't he help him? He was very ill already. He was considered one of the greatest poets of the generation of his time. He received great prizes and has been translated to English a lot. And he asked, he wanted work, editing something. Why didn't you say you needed help? Asked the reporter. I don't feel comfortable, he said. At the end of the interview, he was taken to the hospital in that interview. But obviously it wasn't enough. All his years, he was famous, David Avidan, being eccentric and arrogant. He said he was from out of space and he came from another planet. Amazing technical ability. He's a superior being in the 30s. He feels nostalgia to the future, not to the past. He made several short films, science fiction. Yeah. Anyway, what's the point of falling into despair, you ask? I don't know. I think this poem is like we have nowhere to go. It's about people being stuck in the Middle East, surrounded by countries that you can't go in. The borders, actually, when we talk about Gaza, which is really bad situation there with Hamas, the same thing in here. We really don't have anywhere to go, actually. You can't just cross the border. You can go to the airport and you can fly somewhere, but to be able to afford that, and at the end to come back here. And this poem talks about a personal destiny as well as a general destiny of the Jewish people, that you don't have anywhere to go. That poem is really doesn't give me so much hope, but I think there's hope when you can be real, when you can be honest. It's very important to be able to be honest. I could talk about politics, I could talk a lot about things. I don't want to talk about it though. I mean, it's very important to be authentic and real. And society is the way it is, that if you're some sort of CEO of a company, you have a very high status. But if you're a poet who's able to write beautiful words, you don't really have a great social standing. If you're a doctor who operates on patients, if you do mechanical work, you're considered very important. But sometimes poets also save lives by saying what other people are unable to say. Peace like now. In here, it's very cloudy, overcast. Overcast day. A dog. Maybe you should have had a dog. Peace like now.